I'm afraid of economic collapse.
I'm afraid of the police.
I'm afraid of losing my parents.
I'm afraid of failing.
I'm afraid of the possible breakout of a civil war.
People want to fear things, I think. There's a kind of attraction in fear. There's a kind of desire to be afraid, always to have a certain horrible things often generate ambivalent reactions, especially if you're not, neither you nor your loved ones are personally involved.
Fear is a negative emotional state characterized by feelings of dread and aversion, often evoked in response to stimuli we perceive as threatening. Generally, the more imminent the perceived threat, the more intense the negative feelings evoked. Most emotion theorists propose that fear is functional, that is, it helps us avoid threats, oftentimes without having to put much conscious thought behind our avoidance. We've evolved neural architecture that can help us respond quite quickly to threatening stimuli in our environments.
So I think it's okay to be scared of a disease like COVID-19. It's a problem when you use that to pivot to attack a group. The greater fear is not people's fear of COVID, it's the maskers' fear of the anti-maskers and the anti-maskers' fear of the maskers.
Our freedoms are being taken forever, and I will not be muzzled like a mad dog.
I'd say in America, the biggest problem is racial division. It's really a huge problem. You can see examples of more homogenous societies where they're at each other's throats too. I mean, you look at the 16th century Europe, Catholics and Protestants were killing each other, like massacring each other, based on what from the outside looked like a fairly kind of subtle differentiation of belief. But their religious identities became their cultural and ethnic identity. There's a kind of tendency for this to happen. And of course, it often revolves around issues of power and access to power. I mean, I think the most helpful thing would be for a more even distribution of power and wealth along lines of race and ethnicity within America.
Some stimuli tend to evoke innate fear responses, while others we must first learn to be afraid, often through repeated association. This is a process known as classical conditioning. The Little Albert experiments are a good example of how this works. Researchers paired the presentation of a rat with a loud, noxious noise over and over for a little boy named Albert. The loud, noxious noise evoked an innate fear response in Little Albert. When paired over and over with the rat, Little Albert began to associate the rat with the scary noise. He would then respond to the rat in the same fearful way that he would respond to the noise, even when the noise was no longer presented. He also began to show signs of what is called generalization. Stimuli like the rat also evoked fear responses.
Media makes it possible for us to live in a nation together. I mean, we have to kind of experience being part of a community. Also, media has done a great job of exposing abuses, inequality, social problems, all those things, media which helped drive abolitionism in America. In the pre-Civil War South, Southerners who wanted to uphold slavery, one of the first things they did was try to outlaw the printing of anti-slavery opinion. The first thing a dictator is going to try to do is try to control the media and try to get rid of an independent and free media. People want to fear things, I think. There's a kind of attraction in fear. There's a kind of desire to be afraid. There's certainly horrible things often generate ambivalent reactions, especially if neither you nor your loved ones are personally involved.
Why do some people seek out scary things and others avoid them completely? There seems to be a threshold that varies between individuals. We each have a different threshold for how negative something has to be before a defensive response is triggered. Emotion theorists call this the negativity bias. The interesting thing is, at lower levels of emotional intensity, most people pay more attention to negative things. We watch more negative news, we can't turn away from accidents, In essence, we're always scanning for danger. As stimuli become more and more intense, though, the likelihood that an individual will have a defensive response increases.
I mean, people, they want to see horror movies. These are things that are interesting, and even more interesting if they seem real, or they are real. So the media, I think, has an amplifying effect on that. You can see that, at many, many stages historically. And I think in amplifying fear of the other, providing a narrative about why the other is dangerous. Of course, the media is not always a monolithic block. There's kind of always competing venues.